You're watching Fugitive Red Eye, and welcome to another game review. This one's a long way coming. I took a lot longer to actually get around to doing this than I originally planned, but here it is, the Splatterhouse 2 review that I promised Chisu I would do when I played through the game. For context, this playthrough was 3 months ago, and I originally planned to do the review the next day, so really got backed up on that, and I apologize. Splatterhouse 2 was a Sega Genesis game, and it was part of the Splatterhouse series, as the title would imply. The franchise itself is very heavily inspired by Friday the 13th, with the character looking quite a bit like Jason Voorhees. And in all honesty, out of any game to be Friday the 13th related, I think Splatterhouse 2 is the funnest one I've actually played. I played a little bit of the PS4 game, and I played the NES game. I actually think the NES game has kind of a bad rap. I'm not very good at it. It can be pretty difficult, but I actually think it's pretty innovative. But this one is genuinely just fun. However, it is fucking hard as shit. Before we get into the difficulty and stuff, however, I want to talk briefly about the game's plot, which is understated because it's a Genesis game, but it does actually have a pretty interesting plot. Now, I briefly played a little bit of Splatterhouse 1 back in the day, but by back in the day I mean like just a few years ago on one of the modded Xboxes we have. But Splatterhouse 1 was difficult, and I never really got past the first level. Splatterhouse 2, probably just as difficult, if not more so, I have no idea. But I did manage to play through the whole thing. Now keep in mind, playing through it, I used save states, and I used some cheating stuff, but we'll get to that in a minute. Like I said, let's talk about the plot. So Splatterhouse 2 follows up after Splatterhouse 1, where a guy named Rick has this mask called the Terror Mask that gives him these, super strength and powers to fight monsters. After the events of Splatterhouse 1, Rick's girlfriend is still trapped in this, evil house where all these monsters are, and Rick needs to rescue her. In order to do this, he once again uses the power of the Terror Mask that gives him the strength to fight the monsters. Basically, that's the plot of the game, is he has to get to this evil house and rescue his girlfriend while fighting all these crazy monsters. The game itself is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, akin to, Streets of Rage, or basically any other side-scrolling beat-em-up in concept. You guys know what a side-scrolling beat-em-up is, I assume. In the game, you can punch, you can kick, you can slide, you can jump, you can use weapons, both ranged and melee weapons. And there are various types of monsters that are references to all sorts of other things throughout the game. There's some H.P. Lovecraft inspiration in that you fight a scientist named Dr. West, which is obviously a reference to Herbert West, Reanimator. There's also a creature towards the end that kind of resembles Cthulhu a little bit, which I think is what they were going for. But, as I said, the game itself is hard as balls. It is fucking difficult. So I was playing on my modded Xbox, I was playing a hacked version of the game that had unlimited lives. Now, to be fair, the game already had unlimited continues, but when you're fighting the boss, you would have to start the entire stage over again if you weren't using unlimited lives. I actually could have given myself unlimited health, but I wasn't going to cheat that much. That'd be ridiculous. And originally, I wasn't going to use save states. I think I made it through the first stage and maybe the first 2 stages before I started using save states. And then I started using them every once in a while, until by the end I was save stating quite a lot. When I got to some of the more difficult boss battles, I was actually constantly save stating and loading just so that I wouldn't take damage in those boss fights, because it is really fucking difficult. There's also these tunnel sections where you're falling down and you have to fight all these floating heads. Those parts are really difficult too, and I probably would not have been able to get past them without save states. Obviously, I think a lot of this also could just be my own personal lack of skill. Obviously, if you guys have watched my gaming streams, you know I'm not very good at games. I'm just stubborn and will fight through them. And I'm not opposed to using bullshit, cheaty tactics from time to time. For instance, I almost always cheat on Morrowind using a healing cheat instead of using a potion. But the game itself has a really cool aesthetic. It's a nice homage to old horror movies, and it's also got kind of a metal feel to it. And overall, it's a whole lot of fun. I really like the character designs, I really like the story, what little of it there is. I love the aesthetic. And the gameplay is genuinely fun despite its incredible difficulty. I have thought about trying to make this playthrough into its own separate cut video, because the stream it's in is 9.5 hours long and has a lot of other stuff in it as well. And maybe one day I'll do that. No promises on if or when I'll do that, just because it'll take up a lot of hard drive space, it'll take a while to process, just because of how long the original stream was. And I do think that's part of what put me off doing this review so soon, is because I didn't want to have to get my original gameplay. But with this video, I'm probably using a combination of screenshots, and then I probably captured some of my screen with Hypercam or something to show it on here, or maybe even OBS, I don't know. Point is, I'm probably just capturing the screen from the stream for brief bits just to get a little bit of gameplay to show, so Apologies on that, not actually having the original playthrough just download. It's fucking long. Like I said, it was a 9-hour stream. Not just of Splatterhouse. In fact, it started as a multiplayer stream with me and Corbin playing Duke Nukem Forever, Halo, Halo Wars, and quite a few other things before I eventually ended it with Splatterhouse for the last few hours. I do want to thank Chisu for recommending this game to me. I quite enjoyed it, and apologies for taking so long on the review. Hopefully this review was sufficient for you guys. I definitely recommend the game if you like old 16-bit side-scrolling beat-em-ups and you like horror movies. It's a nice combination of the two. Anyway, this has been Fugitive Red-Eye. Have a good one. Toodles. Hello, Rio, my old friend. How the hell you been keeping then?